Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 488 of Ink in Your Veins. I'm Rachael Herron, and I'm so thrilled that you are here with me today as I am talking to my friend Tiffany Yates Martin, who has been on the show twice before. And you know her, you love her. And if you don't yet, what a blessed treat that you are in for. We're talking about her latest book, The Intuitive Author: How to Grow and Sustain a Happier Writing Career, which is a book that you need. It is so good. And on this show, we really talk about the real stuff. We talk about how writing is hard and how to get out of being stuck and how not to burn out by finding that deepest reason for writing. So you are going to love this. She's always one of my very favorite people to talk to, period, let alone on this show. That is coming up. What is going on around here? Um, my goddaughter Tani is in town and we are having a gorgeous time. It is just such a luscious, sweet, wonderful time where we are just driving around and looking things and doing fun things and going for a swim and eating good food and playing with the dog and playing with the kittens. And it is marvelous. I'm having such a good time. So, therefore, this week I have not done too much work. And dear Ed has been running Rachel Says Right. And that will continue for today and tomorrow. What do we have in our plans? We're going to take our Junebug, our dog, to play in a paddock with her best friend Poppins. Oh, she's moving around behind me as she hears me talking about her. And we may do a Zealandia night tour if we can get into it. We're doing an escape room with a friend, and we have a birthday party to go to. And we're going to be looking at the water. Tomorrow, we're going to drive around to a lighthouse because we both love lighthouses. Who doesn't? And I will just tell you really quickly one of my favorite lighthouse stories from a friend who lives here. And in fact, the lighthouse that we're going to tomorrow, she was raised by a lighthouse keeper father and does not think this is romantic that she had to live in the lighthouse keepers' cottages. And the one that we're going to tomorrow, apparently it had not great wiring when they lived there when she was a kid, and she was and is still a sewer. And one time she got in big trouble with her dad because she blew out the fuse and all the electricity that made the light bulb on the lighthouse go. I know that's not what it's called, just Fresnel lens, etc. By plugging in her sewing machine when she shouldn't have. And I just think that's so funny. So we're gonna go there tomorrow, and we're just doing things like that. So it's lovely and gorgeous, and I'm just taking it all in. It's kind of the opposite of how our holidays went. It's just joy. So that's wonderful. Still playing around with ideas in the Peculiarity novel. I've had a big thought about just taking out the main character set in contemporary times because she's frustrating for me to deal with. I've never really thought this deeply about a book before I wrote it, and there is a big chance that I am overthinking it. I have been getting in and writing, but I still feel like I'm in the planning stages, which is fine. There is a fine line that I try very hard to help other people walk, which is you could think forever, just make a decision and do it. So the fact that this big idea has arisen, again, thanks, Ed, for your always impeccable. Ed is my assistant, if you don't know, and he's my friend, and he is always thinking up new incredible ideas. And new incredible ideas take actual thinking about and making decisions about. So I am going to be doing that this week. And next week, when I work before I go to the Philippines for a couple of weeks, I am going to be working on deciding what to do about The Fix, which is my memoir, which is going to come out later this year. It is my recovery memoir. It's totally done. It's copy edited. Fantastic. All I need to do is record it. And I'm trying to decide between recording it as normal, which takes me forever and then so much editing, or trying out a company like 11 Labs who does digital narration, AI assisted digital narration. Now, hear me out. I have heard a sample from Joanna Penn. She has used them to do some digital narration. She has cloned her voice And I was blown out of the water. I am so impressed with how it sounded. It just sounded like Joanna. Here's the thing. We use AI for many things. I use AI for brainstorming, for marketing, for things that I'm honestly bad at doing. But then there are some things that I am an expert at doing, which it will never be able to do better than I can. It will never be able to write Rachael Herron books better than I can. I truly believe that. Even if it learned my entire backlist of work, it still wouldn't have my everyday, day to day experiences and growth that could prompt the next Rachael Herron book. It could write a book, absolutely, that would sound like me. Yes, but it wouldn't be me. You know what I mean? So I use AI for some things, and I know that we have to be careful. We really have to be careful about when AI can steal work from artists or steal work. I don't want to see AI put audio narrators out of business. I want to listen to books that are read by humans who have a real, true skill set around narrating. However, I have no ethical compunction when it comes to trying and using something like 11 Labs to clone my own voice. Number one, my voice is already completely clonable. If somebody wanted to clone my voice, they could. I don't know why they would, but they could because I've got thousands of hours of my voice out there on the internet, easily grabbable. Anyone can clone. These are things that your elderly parents should be aware of. We all know about the phone calls that are already being made by nefarious people. They clone your voice and then they call your parents and they scream and act like they're dying and request money to get out of jail. And it does sound like their daughter screaming. So, anyway, if you do not have a password set up in your family, your elderly parents should be able to say, "Oh my God, Jennifer, are you really dying? It sounds like you're dying and being tortured. But what's our family password?" And if the spoofer can't give it, and then they hang up and call you. I am on all sorts of tangents today. Anyway, back to voice cloning. If I voice clone, and I will, when I voice clone myself, my voice, to try this out, I am taking no job away from anyone. I am taking no audio narration job away from anyone except myself, which is fantastic because it takes me so long. And I really am going to be playing with this in the next few weeks to see if it will work for me. Here's what I'm excited about. I have a bunch of novels that are not in audio that I would love to have in my voice and that I do not want to take the time to do. And I do not want to do, especially the sex scenes in my romances. But they can be done in my voice in an almost indistinguishable way. Probably the only person who would be able to tell that it wasn't me would be me because I didn't do the recording. So I will be able to use that for books that are not out there already on audio. And that is so exciting to me. Here's my question. I'm wondering if it will be able to narrate the fix in a way that I'm satisfied with, because I do use my voice consciously, and sometimes I will say, well, I am a good narrator of nonfiction. I know this for my own work. And I'm also really conscious of how much emotion and energy and passion and pathos and sadness and joy and depression that I can put into a sentence when I want the sentence to hold the emotion that I wrote. I am good at that. I do not know if 11 Labs can do that. I don't know how their system works. I don't know if you can re-record sentences that didn't sound quite right and ask it to have more X, Y, or Z emotion. I don't know if you can do that. I don't know if you're allowed to. I don't know if they've built that. I bet they will at some point. So I'm going to be having fun playing around with this. I am going to be trying it. So that's next up on my docket while I'm doing all the other things I'm usually doing and while I'm getting ready to launch Ink Village, which I have decided I will not do until I'm back from the Philippines anyway, because I'm trying to do too much in too short a time, and maybe my job's the the job of my life is to realize when I am trying to do too much. So I don't come back from the Philippines. I leave on the 6th and come back the 17th of March. So I won't even launch the new thing until after that. So make sure that you're on my writer's newsletter list so you'll be the first to hear about that. If you might be interested in working with me in a brand new way, in a way I've never worked with anybody before, that you can get onto my mailing list at rachaelherron.com/write. rachaelherron.com/write. The link is in the show notes. Please get on my newsletter list if you're not already on it, because The newsletters that matter the most to me to write. I'm just going to say some of the things that matter most to me to write are the letters that I send to you, to writers. It's those letters and my Patreon essays that I pour my heart and soul into because I love doing them. It is a community that I've built that I love being inside, and I love it when you are there. So if you're not there, please come join. I'd love to have you. There's a whole auto sequence of like 9 or 12 emails that'll come to you that are like the best of the best. They're the greatest hits that you'll get over the course of the first few weeks. All of it's for free, etc. I'm never going to ask you to pay for that. Um, and that's all. I think that is what I'm doing. Now we're going to get into this fantastic, beautiful, fun, amazing chat with Tiffany. Here's Tiffany's bio. Tiffany Yates Martin has spent her entire career as an editor in the publishing industry, working with major publishers and New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and USA Today bestselling and award-winning authors, as well as indie and newer writers. She's the founder of Fox Print Editorial, named one of Writer's Digest's best websites for authors, and author of Intuitive Editing, a creative and practical guide to revising your writing, and her latest, The Intuitive Author, How to Grow and Sustain a Happier Writing Career. She's a regular contributor to writers' outlets like Writer's Digest, Jane Friedman, and Writer Unboxed, and a frequent presenter and keynote speaker for writers' organizations around the country. Under her pen name Phoebe Fox, she is the author of 6 novels, which I love. Please enjoy this interview. And I cannot remember if I tell you about this during the interview or not, but if I don't, please go get on her mailing list at foxprinteditorial.com because her newsletter is one of the very few newsletters. I think I have like 5 or 6 of these newsletters that I always do not read when they come in, and they go automatically into a file folder that I am not kidding is named rather stupidly, read at leisure, because I love to get these emails out and read at leisure, let them soak into my brain. I usually do it while I'm taking a bath. Her newsletters about writing are so good. They're better than mine. You need to be on that list. Get on her list before you get on my list, I'm telling you. Okay, here we go with the interview with Tiffany. Please enjoy. Get some of your own writing done. Please come tell me about it. And gosh darn it, I almost forgot to answer some questions. Oh, you can tell how my brain is working, but I promised I would answer these questions. So instead of hopping into the interview with Tiffany, thank you for being so patient with me. We're going to answer a couple of questions. Okay, this is a question from Holly. Hello, Holly. Holly says, I am currently first drafting book 2 of my YA fantasy trilogy. Book 1 is currently with the copy editor and then booked for a beautiful cover, and I'm hoping it will be out in March 2025. Yay! My question is, book 1 has only a whisper of romance. There's no kissing, no central love story. It's a girl-centric story set in a beautiful realm, a classic hero's journey. But book 2 is taking on a life of its own. There are plenty of romantic undertones, and I feel like it's heading toward love. So I'm wondering, is this okay, and should I go with it? Or is it a little unfair to readers to reel them in with a romance-free first novel and then add it in later? If so, I can always try to rein my characters in. I feel like it follows the natural coming of age arc. As you grow, you become more interested in love. My main character is 16 and out of her village for the first time. Would love to have your thoughts on this one and how cohesive a series needs to be. Thanks so much for the podcast. Thank you for asking this, and I look forward to having you on the podcast, Holly. Uh, my answer to this is it is completely fine. If you were to write a super clean YA story about a girl with not even a tiny, not even that whisper you mentioned that there's a whisper of romance. That is all a reader needs to not be surprised slash shocked when the next book comes out and there is love in it. If you went from not even a whisper to everything showing on the page, no closed door, knocking boots, that would be too big a jump. But moving from a whisper to a touch to perhaps bigger feelings, bigger perhaps physical actions, that is a lovely arc. And I think it does mimic real life. It also mimics exactly what I wanted in books when I was a young adult. And we do appreciate that young adults books are, is it primarily read by adults. I can't remember the numbers, but it's really close to, if it isn't already, having more adults read than young adults. But we remember those feelings, having that whisper of romance that like, oh, is that, why do I feel, oh, goodness, and then having it become more. We want to follow that when we read books. And maybe I am saying I want to follow that feeling as it grows when I am reading books. And we are really writing for ourselves. So always, we are our own best readers. We are writing the books that we want to read because there are other readers out there just like us. If this pleases you, Holly, do it. I can tell you, however, it does please me. This is the kind of series that I would want to read. So if you are looking to capture someone like me, you're already doing it just by thinking about and asking this question. So thank you for asking it. I am pleased to answer it. And yay, keep going. And we can't wait to talk to you on the show. Okay, I think that is the only Patreon mini coaching question that I had in the bank. If I am missing any, if any of you have sent me any and I haven't answered it yet, please ping me because Patreon does sometimes hide those from me, but I just went and looked and I didn't see any. So let's jump into the interview. Thanks for letting me be so spacey today and so jumping around because I'm having fun brain and I hope that you do too. All right, here we go with the interview. Well, I am so pleased to welcome you back to the show. Will you please share your name and your pronouns with us?
Tiffany Yates Martin, she, her, hers, all
Tiffany,
hers.
stars all the time. Tiffany Yates Martin, it is such a thrill to have you back. I believe this might be our third visit on the
I
air
think
because
it
I'm
is.
very selfish and I love to talk to you. And when your new book came out, I was so excited to read it and to I got a chance to see an early copy and we've been talking about these kind of concepts for a while. People will be able to go back and listen to the older episodes. I will link those. But will you tell us a little bit about this new book, please? That
Yes,
I'm in love with.
this one is called The Intuitive Author. The first one was Intuitive Editing, and I have historically focused mostly on hard craft skills. And in fact, the follow-up I was going to write for Intuitive Editing was called Intuitive Character Development, and I was a good third of the way through it and had it all outlined, had been working on the concepts for literally years.
I remember you talking
When
about
this
that.
one, yeah, and it's coming eventually.
Yeah.
But this one just kept bugging me. Like, I started a while ago with the blog. I was starting to notice that authors were burning out. They were getting frustrated. They were feeling overwhelmed. And so more and more my blog posts started to talk about what I call the squishy skills as opposed to the hard skills, which is basically how do we be a writer? How do you like that grammar? In in the current publishing environment that is so complex and ever changing and increasingly challenging, and still maintain a sense of autonomy, control, and happiness and fulfillment so that we can sustain our career for as long as we choose to, hopefully a lifetime. I was hearing people who I know love this career more than anything, and I've had wonderful success say, I don't know if I can go on. I don't know if I want to go on. I don't know if I can get another publishing contract. I don't like the way, my whatever agent wants me to change to a pen name or change genres or my publisher left, whatever it is. If we don't learn how to navigate what are pretty much the constant ups and downs of this career, it's really easy to burn out. And so basically, this is a manual for how not to burn out in your career and how to, and the subtitle is How to Grow and Sustain a Happier Writing Life. And that's basically what it's about. Being an intuitive author means defining it on your own terms, and sort of like it does with intuitive editing, where I talked about growing the story from the inside out. Being an intuitive author means internally figuring out what is satisfying to you as a writer. What do you want your day to day career to look like? And then figuring out how to make that happen with the parts of it that are within your control and how to regard the parts that are not.
I am going to challenge you right now to kind of like sum up your whole book, which you just did, but personally, from stories that are in the book, because the reason I love that you wrote this is it is essential, it is needed. People need to read this kind of book right now, especially in this market. But you're also a working writer, and you know this because not only have you been editing professionally for at a high level for a very long time, but you're also a working novelist, nonfiction writer, and you have been inside this. So I would love to ask you a couple questions. Have you burned out in the past on writing?
Yes, I actually haven't written fiction in probably 3 to 4 years.
Mhm.
I only do nonfiction now, pretty much.
Mhm.
I don't know if I will go back to fiction. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's burnout, though, so much as kind of we were talking before we started recording, walking the talk of the book. And periodically, I kind of evaluate, am I happy and fulfilled in what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And the fiction just kind of quit speaking to me. But I have felt burned out in the past. In fact, full disclosure, my blog post that's coming out tomorrow, which I don't know when it will be when you run
Mhm.
this, is about the fact that this year, for the first time, I felt so burned out that I actually started thinking, is this something, meaning editing and
Mhm.
nonfiction writing for authors, do I still want to do this? And Rachel, I have done this my entire career and
Mhm.
I love it. Like if I'd say all the time, my worst day at work is still a really good day. And I just overworked myself this year, but to the point where I think I started to feel like I was stuck in a groove. There's a question in the book that I always recommend asking periodically throughout your career. I asked it early in my career, I used to be an actor. I was a journalist for a while. I've asked it every single time I have evaluated where I am in a career. And so I asked it of myself a few weeks ago, which is if you knew that what you're doing now, the way you are operating your career and the level you've achieved at it was the most you'd ever get, would you still want to do it? When I asked myself that as an actor, the answer, I actually started smiling and I couldn't stop because I realized, oh no, I don't actually want to do it. And I literally quit that day and have never looked back. That's what happened with journalism. When I asked myself that as an editor, which was a scary question because it's my identity, the way being a writer is so many of our identities. I didn't feel that. I felt this heaviness and a sadness. And it told me, okay, it's not that I've lost the spark for what I'm doing. It's that the way I'm doing it needs some shaking up and some rethinking. So that's sort of what I'm in the process of now.
Ooh, and if people are not on this email newsletter, you should be on it. Yours is one of the few that I just save in my inbox until I'm in the
Thank you.
mood of lying in bed and opening it up. And then you do this really clever thing where you do the teaser, you give us a little bit, and then you say click here to continue reading. And I always click here. I always click here.
Yay.
So, in terms of how you would recommend people define this kind of happiness in their own writing, in their own terms, what would you ask them to look at when they are thinking about this kind of globally?
That is such a good question. So I talk about the fact early like in the first chapter, that a lot of the goals, what we think we want out of this career, are external goals that are outside of our control. I
Yes.
want to be a published writer. I want to
Mhm.
be a New York Times bestseller. I want
Mhm.
to see my books in every airport kiosk I ever go to.
None of
And
those are in our control. We cannot say
yeah,
that enough. That is not in our control.
so basically, I mean, you could be the most talented author on earth and it doesn't
Yep.
matter. That's
Yep.
still not in your control, and nor is it guaranteed.
Yep.
And frankly, you can get it and not get it on the next book. Or you can work your whole career and get close to it and never get it. I mean, there's just a million
Mhm.
vagaries in this business. It's actually a rather brutal business. That said, I've worked in it for decades and I love it. And I know many writers do too. But if that's where our happiness lies, if we're putting it in those things that we don't control, that are really kind of, I mean, everything in this business is subjective and they're mercurial and we don't know what's going to happen, then if those things never happen, does that mean your whole career was a waste or that you can't be happy with it? So to me, the way to think about our careers is on a day-to-day level. Do you
Mhm.
love what you do every day when you're getting to do it, which is, the joke I just made. My worst day at work, still a pretty good day.
Mhm.
If that's the best I ever get, I still like waking up every morning and sitting down and doing what I do. So it's not just do we love writing? It's how do we want to do that? And what do we want to do with our writing? And what gives it meaning to us? So for me, it's reaching other people. I do this blog that you're talking about every week. It's not paid and they're pretty intense. Like the reason I do
They're
the,
not
the thing.
short. They're not
Right, that's what I was going to say. The thing that you said is so clever. I don't do because I'm clever. I do because these are very long blogs. And I don't want to shove that at everybody in a newsletter. So, because there's other stuff in it. So it's
yeah.
like, here's this part. If that sounds interesting, you can move on and read it here because there's a lot
Oh, I just
more.
thought you were a very
And
clever marketer. Like
oh, well, thank you. I just don't want to overwhelm everyone in the newsletter. But so, like, I love them. And they do serve me in a sense that they give me things I want, which is to build a writing community, to be visible to people, to talk about the things that matter to me, um,
to be
to
helping
have a
in a really
presence.
truthful and positive way, which is hard to do. I
That's
think you're
kind of
so,
the whole thank you. And that's
yeah,
kind of the whole focus of that's the tone of the book. Like it
yeah,
does not pull
exactly.
punches about the industry,
Mm.
but at the same time, the last thing I want to do is discourage authors. And what I hope I do in it is give you the tools to navigate those challenges. If you ask somebody what is the main ingredient you need? What's the main thing you need to be a writer? Most people are going to tell you persistence or resilience. But how do you get those things? This is the book that tells you how you get those things of in every different area of your career. I break it into like the writing itself, the career parts of it, the motivation part of it, the demons, which I talk about like crazy, and the life part of it, because art is not life and we're more than just our writing, as important as it is. We don't want that to be our only form of fulfillment and satisfaction. And where does it fit into everything else we value in our lives?
Oh my God, this is so, people are already one clicking your book just listening to you talk about this. I know that. Um,
I
let me
loved
ask you,
writing it. Like
I know you got so much,
this
and
stuff
because we
just
talked
really
about it while you were writing it, and it was just pouring out of
because
you.
you do this like I know that you're working on something that has similar
Quite
themes, and I
similar.
think you and I socially have talked
Yeah.
about the fact that these
Yeah.
are probably the most pressing problems of building and keeping a happy writing career.
Yes. Okay, so that brings me directly to this question. For the newer writer who is as yet they haven't finished their first book that they're happy with, that they want to push off their desk in whatever way that looks. Talk to that newer writer. What are some of the important ways for them to build joy and resilience into their day-to-day writing?
Well, it starts with pain, suffering, and depression because the first step is, and this is the long first chapter of the book, is you have to understand the realities of the industry. I think one of the reasons that there's a lot of disappointment and disillusionment is because people go into this not understanding what the business looks like. I met a woman maybe 3, 4 years ago. She was a friend of a friend. And our mutual friend said to me, well, she writes novels, so would you have dinner with her? And of course. So we go and have dinner. We actually become friends after that. But from the very beginning, she was from corporate America. She was incredibly smart, incredibly focused, logical. She was like, you tackle a problem, you figure it out, you get it. Her plan, what she said to me, this is my retirement plan. I'm
Oh
going
no.
to write book. Yes. I'm going to write books and I've figured out what makes books sell. And then I'm going to sell it. I'm going to get an agent and I'm going to sell it. And then I'm going to build on that and make more. And that is great. That's a great like stretch goal for all of us to have, or a focus point, our goalpost that we're
Hmm.
looking at. But all of those things are subjective and hang in the balance, and none of them are in your control. And those are the things she didn't realize about the industry.
Because
I think
what she
she,
laid out sounds incredibly sensible for most other
yeah,
businesses,
in
but
her
not
business,
this one.
it would have gotten her exactly what she wanted. This is not like any other business. There's no, there, you don't move up the ladder for any logical reason. There's no real clear training program. There's certainly no retirement. You don't steadily make more money in this career. You might get a windfall with one sale and then make half of that for your next book. You might not even get
The
an offer for your next book. I don't
yeah,
think people realize that. I don't think
yeah.
newer authors realize that you are This is hard to hear, folks. So just sit
Well,
down and take a
deep
breath.
breath. You can do it.
You are desperately unlikely to make a viable living as a writer. And I'm going to leave that statement just as stark as it sounds. But if you look at like the Authors Guild surveys, they talk about what the average income is, the median income for authors. And I think for all authors, for all writing, not just books, but everything they do to make money from their writing, I think the median income is
I
$20,000.
think
And
I was gonna say 20 as well. That's what I just read.
I don't
Yeah.
think people realize that even the bestsellers that they're seeing, a lot of the big name authors, even maybe not like your James Pattersons, obviously, but a lot of authors who are getting a lot of hype and doing well in sales still have day jobs and probably always will.
Mm.
So I think accepting all of that is that lays the groundwork for how you make a happy career. Once you know that, it sounds really depressing and for a minute it is, but then you have, a glass of wine or coffee or whatever it is that soothes you, a bath, and then you realize it's very freeing because I think if we're waiting to get that brass ring, then every moment we don't, we're a failure. Then the process to it is interminable and we're not able to enjoy that for its own sake. But if you know that that's the likelihood, then your expectations are much more realistic. And that frees you to decide, what do you want your writing career to look like? What do you
Mhm.
love to write? When do you want to write? What do you want to do with that writing? Like one example I give in the book is a lot of people say, well, I want to make a living from my writing. And I see all these self-published writers doing it. Great. Let's break down what that means. You're going to need to write multiple books a year. You're going to need to be writing one while you edit one, while you market one. You're going to need to spend untold hours a week doing that, plus your marketing. When you think about everything that it entails, is that what you want? That's what I encourage authors to think about. What is the thing you actually want? I think for a lot of writers, it might be, I mean, yes, we'd love to be paid for our work, and every artist should be in a perfect world, which is not this one. So failing, I mean, beyond that, beyond just I want to be paid for my work, what is it you actually want? For me, I want to share it. And I want people to read it and I want it to affect them.
Mhm.
And when I really gave that thought, I didn't need that to be millions of people. I get a thrill. I was telling a girlfriend the other day, there's a young kid in our neighborhood. I've known him since he was 12. He's 16 now. And for a while, he was a photographer, just taking it up as a hobby. And he took a lot of really bad pictures. And then he took this amazing picture of my dog. I actually put it in the book because I'm talking about how learning our craft is a process and it
Mhm.
involves a lot more failure than success, really. Anyway, so when the book came out, I gave him a copy. I gave it to him, Rachel. He didn't even buy this copy, but I was looking after his pet when he was out of town at Christmas, and on his desk was a copy of the book, the one I had given him. And I got such a thrill out of just thinking, this kid is sitting here reading this book. Like that fulfills me. And that makes me feel like a success. Like what I set out to do, I'm doing.
Mhm.
So, am I making $1 million on this book? No. But does it feel fantastic every time I hear from an author that it's helping them or that it's changing how they think about their career? Or same with intuitive editing. Like, weirdly, not weirdly, I guess it's why I stopped writing fiction. The reactions I get to those books mean so much more sort of personally to me than my fiction ever did, even. Like,
Mhm.
I loved when people liked my fiction too, but it doesn't hit me where it does when they love this stuff, when I'm helping someone, because that's my driving force. And that's what we all have to know about what we're doing. What is your driving force? Not what you want on the outside, but what's pushing you to do this from the inside.
And it's a devastatingly hard question to answer, or it can be super, super simple. And I think sometimes people, when they figure out their driving force, they think, well, it's not that unique, because I think a lot of us come to this answer of, I just want to help people. I want to help change lives for the better. There's a thing that I say in, Rachel says, right, when we write together, this is this little thing that we read every time. And it ends with, The words basically by writing, we're changing lives one word at a time. And I
Mm.
always point out that yes, of course, as we're writing and we're doing these things, we're we're writing things that we hope will change lives in the future. Yes, those words will change somebody someday. Hopefully that's the goal. But what they're doing right now in the day to day, bringing it back to this day to day that we're talking about, is that they're changing mine. Every single
Yes.
time I sit down to
Yes.
write, I am making myself a better human being. I understand myself more. I am more able to be compassionate. When I am at the grocery store, when I'm in the doctor's office, when I'm talking to a friend who's struggling with something, I'm a better person for the 45 minutes I spent writing this morning. So those words that I'm producing or revising are already making the world a better place.
Yeah.
That's my day to day.
Because then that's the person we are when we are living in the world, and
Yeah.
that's how we make ourselves that person. I was
Yeah.
leading a retreat once in Baltimore, and we had evening get-togethers where we would just discuss various ideas. And one night somebody brought up the point that they had taken up piano and that they really worked at it. They loved it. They'd always wanted to try to play it. She had no intentions of doing anything with it. And she said, I don't judge it. I don't call it a failure if I'm not a concert pianist. I'm doing it because I love it. When I'm doing it, I'm lost in it. It's that flow thing we talk about. It nourishes something inside of me. It gives me a sense of satisfaction for mastering something that is important to me.
Yeah.
And that's enough. It's its own end. It was kind of, in some ways, it was a big part of the genesis of this book because I think that is what we should bring to our writing. I think that's what brings us to writing in the first place, don't you? Most of us?
Oh, all of
Like
us. I think
most
all
of
of us.
us.
We did
Yeah.
it for the joy, and then we got a little bit entrepreneurial and looked for the money, and then and that's not bad. It happens to a lot of us,
No,
but it
and
is
you should
something to
make it and you
notice.
can make it.
Right. 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 Oh, I love this conversation. Okay, so then what what would you say? So we talked about like the newer writers, but what about the older writers? They've got books under their belts. They've been traditionally published or self-published, and they're facing this particular burnout, dark night of the soul. Is
Mm.
it the same answer? You want to look for the day to day? Do you need to step back and look at everything? What would you recommend?
I think it's the same answer, but maybe in a different way because you already have patterns. You
Mm,
already have, like you and I were talking right before this started that I have felt burnout lately and I felt I was stuck in a groove. And so I approach it like I do. This is why I'm an editor because I approach it from both a right brain and a left brain perspective,
mhm.
which I know they've debunked that now, but
I'm
I'll
going to
come
stick
at
to
it
it for a long
really,
time. Yeah.
I know, because it
I'm
makes
not letting
perfect
it go.
sense to me.
Right.
So I've come at it really, really analytically first, which is to say, and this is what I'm writing about in the blog this week. I think about where am I? What have I been doing? Where am I right now? And how do I feel about that? And I do it in some really specific ways. So and I counsel this in the book too. I create a mission statement. I have created a mission statement and I revisit it every year, if not more often,
Mhm,
if I'm floundering. And I'll think I'll ask myself, is this still what drives me? So reconnect with that because I think it's very easy to default to the answers we've always given to that.
mhm,
4 or 5 years ago, my mission statement really changed, which surprised me. And it's changing a little bit now, but not as much as I thought it would because I was burned out. Then I do my priority list. What is it I actually want? And that is not just for my career, but it's my whole life. Like, what do I want to have time to do? I want to work a little bit less because I really killed it this year. I think that's why I got burned out. I want to do the parts of my job that I really love the most and do less of the parts I don't. It might mean asking yourself those scary questions like, is this still what you want to do? It's a valid question to ask because I think we do make the assumption that, of course, when I was an actor, the last thing I would ever have imagined was that the answer to that question would be anything other than, yeah, of course, this is what I want to do. It's who I am, because that's what I
right.
thought.
Right.
But I realized when I finally asked myself the question, I realized that had changed. But if we're not static creatures. So if we don't
Mhm.
reevaluate where we are now, I worked with an author this past year who was traditionally published. He's older and he has a novel he was working on at the time. And when we worked together, he said he had been wanting to be traditionally published again with this novel, but he didn't know if he would publish another one after this. And he said, I'm older. I don't know if I'm going to get the chance to do this book, to put this book in the world or not. I'm
Mhm.
going to self publish it, which was something he never would have considered before. I
Mhm.
think we have to just keep refreshing ourselves and asking ourselves the questions about how we've evolved because we
Mhm.
do as people and as artists.
And what we want and accepting that that can change at any time. I always tell people that if you want to be traditionally published and want to pursue that path, again, you don't have much control over it, but it's totally valid. It's totally valid to want that, and to do what it takes to get there. If you can pull strings and get there. But I know that and I think we've talked about this before, but in my most recent couple of years here, my happiness comes from writing what I want to write. And then
Hmm.
if my agent can sell it, fantastic. And if she can't, then I'm going to self-publish it, but I'm not going to tie myself up into a tiny millions of pretzels trying to make myself fit into a box that I can't fit into. And that's
Yeah.
where my happiness and my you talk about it in the book, my own willingness to advocate for myself as an author in the way that I want to be an author.
And I don't
And
think we can advocate for ourselves until we know what we value,
exactly.
what we want for ourselves and our career.
I only want to write what I want to write. I don't, and I could write 5 books a year in a series, and I know I would make better money if I did that. And I could write 5 novels. I could, but I don't want to. I make these choices.
Yeah,
Do you know Sophie Littlefield, the writer Sophie Littlefield? I can't remember if
I
we've
don't
ever
think I do.
hung. You would love her. She's one of my best pals. But there was a point at which we were both multi-published and both broke and deciding what we wanted to do. And we had this sit down, come to Jesus talk. And I was like, I think I can teach more. I'm going to teach more. I'm going to do more with writers. And she was like, I'd rather die. I'm getting a job at the Container Store. And then she became like an alpha product genie at the Container Store, and she absolutely loved it. It gave her benefits. It gave her all the time she needed to write the book she continued writing, and she'd been writing for years.
Yeah.
And it
That's
was
the
the
thing
best.
about a day job. It's not like
Yes.
I say in the book, it's not what you do while you're waiting for your ship to come in. It's the ship.
It's
It's the thing that gives you the freedom to write whatever the hell you want, to
right.
dictate the terms of your own career. And
Yes.
so treat it like that. And then that lets you find something you maybe don't love like you love writing, but hopefully enjoy. I mean,
Yeah.
honest to God, that's how I ended up as an editor
Yeah.
because I
That's
was an actor and
yeah.
I was a waiter like every actor on the planet. And I didn't want to wait tables forever. And I knew I needed something that gave me freedom and flexibility. And I'd been an English major and I loved English and I got a perfect score on my AP English test. And I was like, oh, okay, that could be cool. And so I started doing freelance proofreading and copy editing because it let me travel and do regional theater or whatever however I was paying the bills. And then after a while, I realized, oh, holy crap, this is my passion. So
This
I
is
sort of accidentally discovered the thing that has
yes.
made my whole life the most fulfilling thing I could imagine in a
I
career.
I graduated with my MFA and taught for one semester at California College of Arts and Crafts back when it was called that, and hated it. And I just said, I will never teach. I will never teach. I will do anything but teach. And then I did some teaching to build the boat, to build the ship that was coming in, and then I got on the ship, and I just don't know which I like better. Like sometimes it's 51% I like teaching more, and then other days it's 51% I like writing more. I don't know, but it's also just my passion. And how cool and how
Yeah.
lucky it is that we got to find that out. And
Yeah.
and my
And
friend
it's and
Sophie
yours
really
and
likes
mine.
shelves, you know.
I was going to say, ours happens to be in the writing field, and
Yes.
that's great. And I mean, that became my passion. And it sounds like you're 50-50 on that.
Hmm.
Like, I would, if you put a gun to my head and made me pick, I will pick editing every day of the week. Um, but I do love writing as well. And I would
Yeah.
be very sad to lose it.
Yeah.
But also, I have had day jobs, air quotes, that I have enjoyed. I mean, frankly, I didn't hate being a waiter. I was very young at the time. I wouldn't want to do it now. But what I loved is that I could work as hard as I want to make more money. And I like to talk to people, and it wasn't so bad. So find something you enjoy. If you think of it as this slog you have to do until you get to be a famous and, rich writer, which you're probably not, people. I love you and I think the world of you, but let's be realistic.
How many writers do you and I know? Thousands at this point. And how many of them are
Oh,
rich and
thousands.
famous?
Well, how many
One,
of them make a
one,
living just
two.
from their writing? How many of them do you know
Yeah,
make, like what percentage? I would say
it's
the vast majority of the writers
very
I
low.
know and work with do not make a living from their
Mm.
writing, and they are very successful, multi-published.
And that is okay. And that is
And that
okay.
is okay. Like
And
you
it,
wouldn't expect to make a living from your gardening or your cooking or your piano playing, but you might love those things and they might nourish your soul. Some people make a living at those things, but they are equally as difficult and competitive as it is to do it in writing. So don't let that be the only arbiter of whether you feel pursuing this is worthwhile. If you love it and it nourishes you, it's worthwhile.
and and I will go even further and more difficult terms here. So again, everybody take a deep breath. But if you are listening to me and Tiffany talk about this, um, and you're saying, no, I'm really, really doing this for the money. I need to write this book and I want it to be a bestseller because I have had students that I've worked with in the past who say, no, this actually has to be a bestseller. I need to sell it and this is going to be what I'm going to do. And it's okay to change your mind. And if that is your total motivation, absolutely go for it if you really need to keep going for it.
Absolutely.
But
That's
but
as
it's also
valid as
okay to say,
everything.
yeah, it's as valid as everything, but also saying, oh, maybe I don't what am I trying to say here, Tiffany? I'm
My thought is realize that I get that. I mean, most of us do need to make money,
yeah.
but it's sort of the equivalent, I think, of saying, like let's say you love to play football all
Hmm.
throughout high school, all throughout college. If you think you're probably going to be in the NFL and make millions of dollars, you're deluding yourself a little bit. A few of you will, but
Yeah.
most of you won't. And
Yeah.
I think it's the same with writing. But does that mean you shouldn't have played football? Does it mean you can't
Right.
still do pickup games with your friends or play fantasy football?
And it
I
really
mean,
makes a
you
difference
love
in
this
your
thing.
life. Yeah. Yeah. I work my
Yes.
ass off and I'm barely making a living as a writer, and
Yeah.
and 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 it's still what I would choose to do, hands down, every day. But
I
oh,
don't
there's
know
something.
another thing that this is what I love about it, and I think you touched on it earlier. I don't know another thing I can think of that you might pursue that has the potential to be life-changing to someone. And I'm not saying it will, and I'm not saying everyone, but I do know that there have been some incredibly meaningful moments for me from my art. I mean, as an actor, there was a guy standing up in a standing ovation at the end of a performance with tears running down his face, the only one standing. I don't know what the hell that guy went through, but I know I was part of it, and it
Oh.
meant a lot to me. And I've
Mhm.
had a woman tell me my books got her through chemo. And I get letters from authors a lot telling me that one of the two books I've written for authors has helped them remember what they love about writing or,
Yeah.
demystified editing in a way that suddenly they're rejuvenated for something they thought was a failed project. So that to me, I don't know another thing you get to try to do that could do that and
That you
change
can
your
reach
life in the process.
and can reach so many people that you have no idea where your book ends
Yeah.
up at a little free library and somebody picks it up. I got one of the, I may have told you this before, but one of the most wonderful things that's ever happened to me in my writing career was I had a woman write a terrible review of Life in Stitches.
Oh,
I hate this. I hate this. I never actually saw the review, but she said, I hate this author's morals. She's a sinner, etc. And because in A Life in Stitches, I'm talking about dating men and knitting, and then I talk about dating a woman and knitting, and then I marry a woman. And she took that as a bait and switch. Like she's pushing the gay the agenda on me. But so she wrote that review, which I never saw. She wrote to me 1 or 2 days later and said, I wrote a review, but I was going to burn your book. I think that was in the review, she said. But then I decided I really wanted to know what happened next. So I read it. I finished reading it, and you have changed my mind about gay people. I have never talked to one before. Also, she doesn't know that she has. They're just too scared to tell her that
Right.
she, you definitely have,
Oh
ma'am.
my God,
But
Rachel.
but she said I took the review down. I think the book is lovely. You're a lovely person. You've changed my mind about
I
the
have shivers
LGBTQ.
right now.
I never meant to do that with that book, but it was like it was one of those moments, that I
I,
could not.
a lot of us right now are distraught about the state
Yeah,
of the world. I
yeah,
don't know another way to try to bring people together and enhance understanding
yeah,
than that. I mean, look
yeah.
what you just did. And that is one person who
One
will
person.
probably tell other people about that. And so
Yeah.
you're having this ripple effect in the world
And
from
then when
telling
her
a
nephew
story that
comes
was in your
out,
head.
she'll have like, oh, I do know another. I know I can be nice to my nephew. Like all the because he will.
Look, they're
10% of us are out
everywhere.
there. 10 to 20%. Oh, this has been fabulous. Fabulous, Tiffany. All right. Will you please tell us where we can get the intuitive author?
Yes, the best place for everything is probably my website, foxprinteditorial.com. I'm going to brag and say that for the last 2 years, Writer's Digest has named it one of their best websites for writers, which
It
makes
really
me very
is.
happy because
Yeah.
it is cram-packed with resources and all kinds of tools and techniques and tips for authors. My
Hmm.
weekly blog is there if you want to check it out or sign up for it.
Please
I
sign
have
up for it,
online
everybody.
courses that I'm probably phasing out. So don't, if you're going to see the online
Get too
courses, get
excited.
on those. But it's chock full of resources and the books are on there too. And that's probably the best clearinghouse for everything. Best way
Did
to
you do
reach
it? Is
me.
there an audiobook on that one yet? You're working.
There is
You're
for the
working on that.
first one. And funny story. I was 11 chapters into the audio recording it because it has to be in my voice because it's very
Yeah. Yeah.
conversationally written. And my audio engineer told me that all the files were unusable. And then I lost a little steam. And so I took December off and now I'm back in the studio. So there will be. It was a little
Fabulous.
disheartening.
That's fair. My
See, roller
soul just
coaster
dropped
ride.
into my boots. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I
Publishing
told
is a roller
myself?
coaster.
I
What?
I used to be an actor, like I said, and I thought, you know what? When I did a play, I spent 4 weeks rehearsing that puppy. So this was rehearsal. Now get back in there.
And it will be better. It will be better when you read it
Yeah, I
again.
think so. I think so.
It's been a joy having you. Thank
I
you,
love talking
Tiffany.
to you. Thank you. And thank you for everything you do for the writing community, you big gem, you.
Thank you. Right back at ya.